Let me ask you a question, and as you now know, as always, it's not worth searching for the answer on Google, Wikipedia, or anywhere else. Where would you say that the largest number of artworks in the world are concentrated? I'm sure most of you will think of the Louvre in Paris, or the MOMA in New York, or maybe even the British Museum in London, because we used to steal a lot of stuff. Well, I'm sorry, but no. Okay. Yes, it's true that all of those museums house gigantic collections, and then we'd also have to define exactly what we consider art and not. But, my VisualPolitik geeks, regardless of all these issues, there is a veritable art trove that you've likely never thought about. The answer to the question we are asking ourselves at the beginning involves careful consideration of Geneva in Switzerland. There, we will find a very special place, a place that houses one of the largest collections and certainly the greatest amount of fine art per square meter in the world. And you know what? The most surprising thing of all this is that neither you nor I will ever be able to enjoy it. I'm talking about the Freeport of Geneva. No, really, we're not making a mistake. We're talking about a port in Geneva, which, despite having no sea, is one of the most important free ports in the world. For those who aren't really familiar with them, free ports are places with laxer regulations and much less tax. The idea is to make it easier to move goods. Founded in 1888, the Geneva Freeport is located next to a large railway station with a dry port for goods. And far from what we might think, it is neither an area restricted to passage, nor is it a highly protected site surrounded by huge fences, walls, and lots of security guards. The truth is that the largest art collections in the world are in a couple of not very large buildings that, if located in your city, would probably go unnoticed. And take note, because this warehouse has so many works of art that not even the leaders of the Geneva Freeport are able to quantify numbers. To give you an idea, it is estimated that within its walls are stored thousands, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of works of art by such outstanding artists as Leonardo da Vinci, Van Gogh, Renoir, El Greco, among countless others. For example, it is believed that there are more than 1,000 of Picasso's works deposited here. In fact, after an audit by Swiss officials in 2012, it was revealed that there could be, and just remember, this is just an estimate, about 1,200,000 works of art, which would put it in the top 3 of world collections. And remember, we're talking about a 2012 audit. It is believed that the current inventory could be even greater. To help you understand the magnitude we're talking about, the National Gallery in London has about 2,300 paintings in its collection, and the MOMA in New York, almost 200,000 works of art of various kinds. So, we're not only talking about the largest deposit of archived art on the whole planet, but if we also take into account the quality and the value of the works stored there, then with them, you could possibly create the most impressive art gallery in the entire world. So, you probably want to know more about this secretive and stunning place. What do you think about immersing yourself in a market as covert as the international art market? Well, you're in luck, because that is exactly what we're going to talk about in this video. Let's get started.
The Freeport of Geneva. Shelter or hiding place?
Let's be honest, the actual goods and figures handled in Geneva's Freeport are unknown. Even their own directors are not able to give concrete figures. What we do know about this mysterious place is that amongst paintings, sculptures, all types of antiques, and pieces of art of every variety, the value of the works deposited here is simply and plainly priceless. What's more, this space has become a good business for the Canton of Geneva, a canton that, in addition to owning almost 90% of the shares of this Freeport, has income each year from this activity totaling more than $10 million. But why do great collectors and great fortunes keep their collections in this place and not any other? What advantages does it offer? And why is it called a port? I'm sure this is exactly what many of you are asking yourself at this point. And no wonder. The traffic in works of art is one of the most enigmatic business activities out there. Now, before we go on, a quick note. Don't think for a moment that Geneva is the only tax-free art bunker we can find in the world. Another of the most significant ones is close to Singapore Airport, and one of the most recent to open is in Delaware in the United States. In other words, this concept is not unique, although Geneva is definitely the biggest. As you will see, even though the Freeport of Geneva is only one of the 10 free ports and 245 free zones that exist in Switzerland, it is an art bunker that has become the greatest tax haven for large investors in this market. One of the main advantages it offers is the possibility to make transactions, that is, buy and sell works in the Freeport itself without paying any tax. As long as goods do not leave the Freeport, everything done is tax exempt. It is also tax-free to store and import art in this place. And that's important because, my friends, the truth is that in most countries, tariffs or taxes of between 5 and 15% are charged for the importation of works of art. Of course, tax advantages aren't the only thing that leads the world's biggest art collectors to use Geneva. Let's say there is something else fundamental that also has a lot to do with Swiss financial culture, and that is discretion.
The Geneva Freeport is quite old. It is not an especially glamorous place, but this is not important when you go to see a work of art. It only needs decent illumination and the certainty that it is well guarded. The place is practical and central, is a safe place to work, and people value discretion. Jean-René Saliards, Sales Director of Fine Art Fund Group.
Let's just say that they follow the old Swiss premise, don't ask. Of course, as you can imagine, that's not a policy that comes without controversy. In 1994, for example, antiquities looted from the Getty Museum in Los Angeles were discovered in the Freeport of Geneva. In 1993, 200 ancient pieces stolen from Egypt were found, and more recently, a Roman sarcophagus was found in 2010, the disappearance of which had been reported in Turkey, and in 2016, 2 Etruscan sarcophaguses were returned to Italy. These, and other previous scandals, forced reforms to bring in regulations to imports that target this Freeport, in line with those of similar zones within the rest of Switzerland. In this way, importers of works of art arriving in Geneva must now declare the name of the owner, the origin, and the value of the goods they store. And since 2009, the Freeport of Geneva must also have an inventory of all of the items to be found there. So, what's the problem? Well, many pieces, not to mention most of the pieces that were stored there before 2009, have not been able to be inventoried, so only their owners know that they are there and what their real value is. In addition, these kinds of places are not spared accusations about the role they play in the global money laundering market. Surprise, surprise. According to many experts, it is relatively easy to arrive with a good bundle of illicitly obtained bills, buy a painting with them, and resell it months later to get clean money without even having to take the box out of the warehouse. And as long as you don't sell it, believe me, your money is safe. Of course, not all art lovers are money laundering. And my VisualPolitik geeks, apart from these issues, the question we can ask ourselves is this a shelter or a hiding place? I'll leave you a video in the description related to this issue that I think you might find interesting. But at this point, how about we review what the international art market is like and what it is? Why do so many great fortunes invest their money in art? How much money does this market move annually? Which are the leading and emerging countries in the world art trade? If you want to know the answers to these questions, you had better stay tuned.
The art market. Safe value?
When we think of a value refuge to invest our money in, what do we always think about? Real estate? Investments? Stocks? Gold, maybe? Well, for the really big fortunes, art also plays a key role. Surprising as it might be, the truth is that art trading has managed to overcome the hardest effects of the Great Recession and position itself as one of the safest, non-financial assets used by large fortunes to invest their money. In fact, as you can see in this graph, the flow of money that has moved in the art market has remained quite stable over the last decade. We are talking about a market that moves more than $60 billion every year in art sales. By the way, can you imagine which countries are the main players in activity for this market? Well, this time it's not Switzerland. It's basically 2 countries, the United States and the United Kingdom. Together, they account for more than 70% of world art exports. And yes, I know what you guys are thinking. Having come this far, you're thinking to yourself, all right, Grant, but what does all this mean? Why is art apparently so highly prized by great fortunes? And seriously, why is it called a port? Well, just think about it for one moment. Every year that passes, money loses value. Businesses can be exposed to all kinds of technological and commercial revolutions. And if you don't believe me, just think about companies like, I don't know, Kodak, BlackBerry, Blockbuster. Remember those guys? If you make loans, you may have to face delinquency. And if you invest your money in fixed income and then a financial crisis occurs, you may have many possibilities to lose much of your fortune. But do you really think that one day the value of a Monet, a Van Gogh, or a Picasso will depreciate? Do you think that signature art, that is, of renowned artists, artists could lose its value? The truth is that to date, there have been very few cases in which a famous work of art has been sold at a lower price than it was previously purchased. And that's exactly what encourages a large fortune to create their own art collection. And that's also what explains why real fortunes have been paid for some pieces. For example, in 2017, Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi was sold in New York for a whopping $450 million. No, really, $450 million. And let's take note here, two important things that we have to take into account when talking about art. The art market is very closed, because if you don't want to screw up, you really have to know your stuff. And, of course, as in any other market, bubbles can be produced and profitability is far from assured, especially when you pay a lot for works of questionable value. In any case, the truth is that for decades, the art market has been advancing favorably. Monetary expansions, market interest rates, currency devaluation, etc. For example, take a look at this chart that shows us how the price of the most expensive contemporary artwork sold since 1989 has evolved. In 1989, the most expensive piece of contemporary art was sold for just over $20 million. And now, the most expensive piece of art that was sold last year in 2019, a sculpture of a steel rabbit, was sold for a whopping $91 million. That's 4 times more. Having said that, let's take this a step further. Can you imagine in which country this market has grown the most in recent years? Well, I warn you, you're not going to believe this, and you really will not believe this, because the country I'm talking about is Argentina? No, really, Argentina. By volume of exports of paintings and drawings, Argentina ranks 7th in the world. The land of the tango moved $483.5 million with this commercial activity in 2019. That's, now pay attention to this number, 1,203% more than the previous year. But if you really want a shock, let's compare that to 2015. The growth since then has been, hold on to your butts, 56,848%. So, you might logically be asking yourself, what is going on in Argentina? Why is the art market there skyrocketing? Let's take a look.
The surprising case of Argentina.
So, we've said many times here before on VisualPolitik, Argentina is, for its bureaucracy, its regulations, its taxes and tariffs, and a long etc. of restrictions and impediments on an economic nature, a hellhole for business and trade activity. However, the case of art seems like an exception. In this area, Argentine law is very similar and even freer than that of many developed countries. For example, after the amendment of Law 24633 on the international circulation of works of art in January 2018, Argentina further relaxed the procedures for exporting and importing works of art. Now, only one export notice is needed for the work of artists alive or deceased up to 50 years ago. That is, art exports are not subject to licensing or virtually any state control in a country where everything, absolutely everything, is regulated in some way. And if we tell you that this procedure can be done completely online, it gets even more interesting, right? Not only that, for works of art by artists who died more than 50 years ago, you only need a license from the Ministry of Culture, which can be obtained in less than 48 hours. I wish everything was so easy in Argentina. Hell, I wish anything was so easy anywhere. That would certainly change a lot of things and make life there a little bit easier. The fact is that Argentina allows you, for example, to arrive as a tourist, buy art, and then take it out of the country as hand luggage on your plane without any problem. In addition, the law allows you to move art from abroad and into the country without any limitation in the case of fairs or exhibitions, and without the need to perform slow bureaucratic procedures that cost time and, most importantly, money. In fact, when we're talking about art, in many ways, Argentina simply does not seem like Argentina. But why can this particular market be so liberalized and deregulated? Well, the official argument is that it is intended to promote the circulation of Argentine art around the world, close quote, and thereby strengthen the national art market.
La protección de nuestras obras de arte forma parte de algo que todos y todas tenemos que tener conciencia, y por más que sea algo que quizás no se visibilice muchísimo, existía un reclamo de este sector y nosotros tenemos que escucharlo.
As if this same premise would not justify doing exactly the same with the rest of the sectors in the economy. So why on earth is art more important than, I don't know, the jam industry, for example? And this, my visual politics nerds, is precisely what doesn't feel right. Could Argentina be becoming more than a regional epicenter for the art market and turning into something a little murkier? It is really not something that we can confirm 100% today, but the suspicions are on the table, especially considering how the rest of the Argentine economy works. But we've brought you this far. It is your turn now. What is your opinion of the art market? Would you invest your money in it? And for the love of all that is holy, why is it called a port in a landlocked country? Leave your answers in the comments. So, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like to let us know that you did, and don't forget to subscribe for all of our new videos which come out a couple of times a week. You can also hit the little alarm button down there if you want to get notifications for when our videos are coming out on your phone or device. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They've provided all the vocals in this episode that were not my dulcet tones. Also, if you like podcasts, why not check out my podcast? It's called Making Europe Grants Again. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's a comedic take on all politics and news by a bunch of my comedy pals. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And, as always, I'll see you next time.
And if you want to learn more about politics and hear even more of my lovely voice, you can join us at Reconsider Media. We have a podcast at reconsidermedia.com/podcast. See you there.